This week on Quadriga, Canonization, the significance of sainthood. The Catholic Church is preparing to declare the sainthood of two popes. Popes John Paul II and John XXIII are due to be canonized this Sunday. Pope John established the reforming Second Vatican Council. Traditionalists, however, feel he went too far. John Paul was immensely popular with Catholics thanks to his charisma, but some liberals say he was dogmatic and covered up clerical sex abuse. Pope Francis took the decision to have both pontiffs made saints at the same time. Amid abuse scandals and declining congregations in some parts of the world, is the canonization ceremony mere spectacle, or does it have a deeper meaning? Your host this week, Ali Aslan.
Hello and welcome to Quadriga. The Vatican is bracing itself for a historic event, the canonization of not just one, but two popes at the same time. So what is the significance of the ceremony, of the sainthood in general, and who are the two popes to be canonized? That's what we want to talk about on today's show, together with these three individuals, all who've been following the story very closely. Welcome to Alexander Gerlach, who's the founder, publisher, and editor-in-chief of the German magazine The European. A theologian by training, he has also written for several of Germany's leading newspapers. Stefano Casertano, a native of Rome, has been the Germany correspondent for various Italian newspapers. He also teaches international politics at Potsdam University. And Claudia Keller, who's an editor at the German daily newspaper Der Tagesspiegel, where she writes primarily about religious affairs. Welcome to you all. Alexander Gerlach, a historic event is awaiting the Vatican. Hundreds and thousands of people expected to be witnessing this event this coming weekend. Now, tell us a little bit about the significance of the ceremony in general. Clearly, this is not the first time.
Different than the churches of the European Reformation, the Catholics always upheld the idea of a perfect Christian life. Perfect not in the sense that nobody of the saints would ever have been done a mistake or have sinned, but also like saying they are they show us the way of a Christian life, and this is why Catholics have the saints and worship those saints and have name their children after them, and so this becoming a saint is something which is very much in the focus of Catholic spirituality.
Claudia Keller, this is the 21st century, yet the tradition of sainthood hasn't seemed to have lost its appeal. So many people are very excited about this event.
Well, I think people need to believe in saints, in sainthood, in belief in something. You also have to work miracles to become a saint, to believe in the impossibility can become true. I think a world without saints, without wonders would be very empty and maybe like a lottery without a big prize. So I think it's important to believe in saints
and
of some sort.
Stefano Casertano, you are a native of Rome and obviously have been an astute observer of all things related to the Vatican. This is the very first time, the very first ceremony in history where not one but two popes will be canonized in one ceremony. Do you think that adds to the appeal of this event?
Of course, it adds to the appeal, and in particular that there is two living popes canonizing two popes of the past. And, you know, actually the presence of the Holy See is what makes Italy and Rome relevant in the world, more and most than any other thing. Nothing in the field of politics, of economics is as much important internationally as the presence of the Pope. So this is indeed a unique event for Rome and for Italy.
And Pope Francis certainly has been attracting the limelight ever since he took office over a year, and this might add even further to the spotlight that is being shined upon the Vatican. Alexander Gerlach, let's look at the two popes. Let's look at the two popes that are set to be canonized. For one, obviously, Pope John XXIII and Pope John Paul II. The latter, obviously, perhaps of more recent history and in memory. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of these two seem to stand for very two different wings within the Catholic Church, don't they?
Oh, they do. In particular, if you have this broad look that John XXIII was the initiator of the Second Vatican Council, where he tried to reconcile the Church with the modern ages. And actually, he was quite successful in that, but in the late 60s, the so-called Cultural Revolution in many parts of the world took place, and so the Church was again behind the time, so to speak, and John Paul II was really a political pope and a charismatic pope, but he was very strict, or let's say conservative, in many views of let's say sexual doctrine. So these two seem to be opposing each other. But what Stefano just highlighted is that there's two popes living and there's two being canonized. The importance of the papacy globally is not to be underestimated, since there's even Lutheran bishops or bishops from not Catholic denominations who say actually the Pope is the figurehead or the spokesman of all Christianity.
And Claudia Keller, again, let's look at these two popes and the various wings, the two wings that are being represented here. For one, Pope John XXIII is generally being lauded and seen as a hero of the more progressive wing of the Catholic Church, whereas Pope John Paul II being the hero of the more conservative fraction. Is this an attempt by Pope Francis to reunite and perhaps even reconcile the two fractions?
Well, the canonization of John Paul II was introduced by Pope Benedict, and I think that Francis wished to have a counterpart to John Paul II, and so he took in John XXIII. So not only to have canonized one tower figure of the conservatives, but also to have canonized a counterpart for the more leftist Christians, Catholics.
So this is a strategic move then?
Yeah, well, I would say so, yes.
Stefano?
I mean, some people believe that the Church doesn't need canonization to assert political positions like this one. But I tend to agree with you, actually. I think that it's an attempt to reunite the two sides. Nevertheless, we must also consider that there are some common elements that actually bind the position of the two canonized popes together. For example, the position towards our other religions, and the position of towards, for example, Jews, and during the Second Vatican Council, all the position of the Church, also in the liturgies against the Jews, has been reformed, and the best friend of the Pope of John Paul II was a Jew, actually. So there is also some common elements which bind the two figures together.
Yeah, and in fact, the John Paul II never wanted to get rid of any element of the Second Vatican Council. So what for the Church is very important is the continuity. And this is what Pope Francis would emphasize on, and Benedict XVI would also emphasize on it. Clearly, if you are a Pope from Argentina, you bring different views in the office as if you are a Pope from Bavaria.
Would you agree then, as Claudia Keller stated, that this is a smart, if not even shrewd, political move on the part of Pope Francis?
I mean, our memory is short, and when John XXIII died, he was a very popular pope too. And it's not only the Church that makes the decision when somebody is canonized; it's the people. I mean, when the burial of John Paul II took place, they had the signs saying "Santo subito," meaning canonize him immediately. So, and there's this old saying, "Vox populi vox Dei," so what the people's voice is God's voice. Whoever, we do not want to debate this particularly, but the thing is, actually in church terms, who is said that the Church would think in centuries, like now he died in 2005, this is 9 years ago, so this is a very quick canonization. And if the Holy See would have decided to not canonize John Paul II now, but in a few years' time, it would also have been very much in the line of the Church tradition.
Claudia Keller, please.
Yeah, well, but Pope Francis really rushed in and brought in Pope the 23rd. And he even said, well, we don't need a second miracle for his canonization. So this seems to be really his wish to send in a second person for canonization, and not just laying back and thinking in centuries.
Well, whatever the motivation, clearly we will have the canonization of these two popes. And let's look at the details of the work that these two popes have been doing in their lifetime. Obviously, Pope John the 23rd reigned from 1958 to 1963, best known, as Alexander Gerlach already said, for the introduction and launching of the Second Vatican Council. Many people lauded him for that, but there are also some people who criticized him for that in the aftermath, saying the Second Vatican Council led to a weakening of the Church. Would you agree?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it was a step that really needed to be taken to open the Church to modernity, and not to stay back and lose people and lose people in their faith, in their daily life, in their daily modern life. So I would not at all agree with that this step weakened the Church. No.
And this is one point where Catholic fundamentalists and Muslim fundamentalists and fundamentalists of all kind have a common ground, that they pretend and say there has not been a change at all, and there is like this very core of Catholicism, of Islam, but this is not true. Every religion has been transformed over the course of history, and it's obvious that today Catholicism is not the same as 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, and this is the same in Islam and in every other religion.
Had Catholic Church not adapted to all different kinds of faith practice all over the world, it would have died 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and this is the challenge of every religion. I mean, this is what we have in the discourse about Islam, for instance, also, just to highlight another religion, because then we can focus on the point that if you say, oh, we do not interpret the Holy Scriptures, then they will just become like a frame, and they will be dusty, and they will not be related to by the people. So the fundamentalists in the Catholic area, they just say there is this very Catholic thing, and we have to protect it over the course of it. And this is like bullshit, because it has been a change all over the time of history. Catholicism, if you look at old cathedrals, they have from every century, they have like annexations, here a chapel and there a tower, and this is what every faith is about.
Stefano, I see on your face, on the expression on your face, that you don't necessarily agree.
I think that the most interesting feature of the Second Vatican Council is that it made more or less everybody unhappy with it. I mean, depending on the side where you stand, because the conservatives indeed believe that it weakened the Church. The progressive claim that it's actually the changes it introduced were more cosmetic than deeper ones. So I think that in terms of what this step by Pope Francis means, the double canonization of the conservative and the progressive Pope, is to say is actually the first step towards a new reform, which he started already introducing. I think it's very important. On the other hand, we cannot also downplay the role of what came before Pope Francis. So Pope Benedict, he was actually the figure behind John Paul II, and he will be present at the canonization, which is also a presence of a pope of that kind is never by chance. So this is also a political message. So changes are yet to come, and I think there will be a new, very important council soon.
And clearly, the canonization of Pope John XXIII is of importance to Pope Francis, because he dispensed with the normally required second miracle here. Do you think that's an unusual step, Claudia Keller?
Yes, I think so. And the traditionalist group and section of the Church, they're outraged about. You can't just leave a second wonder fallen under the table. I think so you can. And well, I don't believe in wonders like the Catholic Church does, though.
What Stefano said is very interesting, because it has not been a cosmetic change. All the documents of the Vatican Council re-emphasize ideas about the church who even derive from the very early ancient times of the church, so that they put the altar back in the middle of the ceremony and not to the wall. It has been like this in the beginning of the church, and then it over the course of history it walked, so to speak, to the wall. And whatever, this seems to be cosmetic in terms of the liturgy, but the church has declared itself again as being on a pilgrimage, as being on the way, as the people of God, which sounds very communistic to a certain extent, if you want to hear it like that. So there has been a re-emphasis, and even that the council, as the highest institution in the church, even that is doubted by the conservatives. They would just say the Pope ex cathedra says what is the doctrine, and the church is semper triumphans. That means like it's self-explaining. And the others say the church is semper reformanda, and I guess this is true in the very sense. If you look over the course of history, the church always had to change itself in the various environments as where it started to grow. And this is what you just said. It's true. These two canonizations show that the reform is still going on, and that neither side won.
Neither side won, says Alexander Gerlach. Pope John XXIII will be canonized regardless of how his achievements are being assessed in the aftermath. The second pope that will be canonized along with him enjoys perhaps greater prominence, but that's also because he had a much longer reign, 27 years to be exact. John Paul II. Let's have a quick look at his career.
John Paul II was the most traveled of all popes, and also one of the most popular with the Catholic faithful. Along with his personal charm, John Paul is remembered for contributing to the end of communism in Eastern Europe. But he was criticized by some liberal Catholics for being dogmatic on key church issues, such as celibacy for priests. They also say he turned a blind eye to clerical sex abuse allegations. John Paul was a strong supporter of the head of the Legion of Christ order, Martial Martial, who was revealed to be a pedophile. The Vatican denies John Paul personally intervened to protect Martial. Some Catholics say questions remain over his legacy, and that just 9 years after his death, John Paul's canonization is happening too soon.
Well, Stefano, John Paul II, Pope, and we just heard who only died 9 years ago. He'll be said to be canonized this coming weekend. A lot of people are saying it's too soon. 9 years are too soon. Even Pope Benedict XVI, he did away with the required 5-year waiting period after Pope's death to introduce and launch the process of sainthood. What do you think? Is it too soon?
It's very embarrassing to tell a pope what he should do, even if you are a journalist. So actually, whatever you say.
Well, we're not sure he watches the show, but let's hope he does.
Of course. It's, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, I might have the suspect that yes, it's quite too soon, because for people that believe in saints, saints are a serious thing, and so you have to follow the procedure. If you don't follow the procedure, then it might become empty with years, with centuries. But if the Pope has taken this decision, I'm sure he's got his reasons. So,
well, I mean, I'm very agnostic about this, but having a look at the life of Pope John Paul II, he canonized himself more than 500 individuals, so he started this kind of process. I mean, they may have followed the procedures, but he named saints so many people as no pope ever before. So maybe we also see a bit of a secularization of the topic of a saint. Maybe that's also something we see here.
Claudia Keller, too soon? 9 years after his death, does the canonization of Pope John Paul II come too soon?
Yeah, I would say it comes too soon. As you mentioned, the Church usually thinks in centuries, and so why this rush 5 years after his death?
I mean, we see at this point that the new Pope really is eager to go on with the reforms, and we have to be clear about that Benedict XVI also was kind of a reformer in different regards, as we see that with John XXIII. So there has been a constant there has been, they knew there has to be reform and ongoing reform. And Francis takes this step, and in this October there is the Bishops' Congregation in Rome, and where they debate about the Church's positions in ethics of family and sexuality. So I guess this will also be a next step where the reform goes one step further.
We cannot also downplay the fact that last week the Pope called a divorced woman to tell her it's not the end of the world if a divorced woman takes the communion. So it's small steps towards a reform that's bound to come. What I would like to underscore anyhow is that if we consider John XXIII and John Paul II, it's both popes tried actually to open the church, to get closer to people, and also using new media, which is something that it was very revolutionary for both of them. And also the comparison between Pope Francis and Ratzinger was also the concept. So Ratzinger wanted to focus on a smaller and closely connected church, whereas Francis has changed again to the position of John Paul II and John XXIII. So these are the elements that also are important for him.
But I would disagree with you saying that John Paul opened the church to the people. I mean, he flew to every countries and met a lot of people. But within the church, he emphasized hierarchy and returned to kind of authoritarianism. And so he was not at all for dialogue and reform within its church.
It depends on what you mean to open the church, if you mean marketing or you mean content. So.
Well, yeah, for marketing he probably did,
okay,
but
I didn't want to say that word.
Content,
Thank you for saying it.
Well, what John Paul II is one of the most important popes ever in terms of politics. His importance for the fall of the Iron Curtain is not to be underestimated, and all the other figures, Gorbachev and Bush Sr., they all say that without the help or the negotiation skills of the Catholic Church, the course of history would have been different. And having a pope coming from Poland, I mean, you could call it a kairos, because why did they even elect a pope from Poland in the time of the Cold War? This was even also a signal back then in 1978. So this pope is judged by history not only in regard of how he dealt with his church, but also his significance for the rest of the world.
And certainly his accomplishments vis-à-vis the end of the Cold War are undoubted. But there are some people out there who say he should not be canonized, regardless whether it's too soon or not, because his legacy is tainted due to the sexual abuse cases within the Catholic Church, which he willingly or unknowingly helped to cover up. What do you make of this, Alexander Göller?
This is and this is actually a point where more time would help. I mean, you see this. We had this when. This is another topic. But if you have more time, you have a clear look on this matter. What we know today is biased. There is no clear evidence of that the Pope would have covered up something. We know that Ratzinger tried to follow up on these things when he got notice of them. But still, the emphasis of the Church 10 years ago or 15 years ago was not on that topic. Then they started, I think in 2004 or 2003, they had a paper on the formation of priests and the child abuse within that. So you can argue as soon as they got real knowledge of it, they tried to change something. Others say they didn't.
Well, but look, John Paul favored this group, Legion of Christ, which was founded by a Mexican priest called Maciel. And it was known in the Vatican, even in his papacy, that this guy was really a sexual predator and fathered at least 3 children and even abused his own children sexually. And John Paul didn't do anything.
Well, I'm not sure if the Vatican, but yeah, I mean, today we know this is like 10 years later. I'm not sure if we had, like in the beginning of this century, we had more than rumors. I mean, I lived back then in Rome and I had close contacts to the Vatican, and of course such a person like Maciel, who filled monasteries like no other. I mean, the legionaries of Christ, they have like all over the planet, so they have monasteries and seminars, so to speak, and the former
very charismatic figure, sure.
In fact, and so the former Pope, maybe, who is also called to be a charismatic, so maybe he just saw that fact. I'm not advocating this, but from my experience, it was not so clear 10, 15 years ago that this guy was a child molester. I mean, this is, you can't just point that out so clearly.
On a personal note, I've been 13 years in a Catholic school. Not to become a priest, it was just like something that poor kids from Rome had to undergo, and poor in the sense of. But yeah, anyhow, we had the Legionaries of Christ that would come to visit the school every year, and they would invite us to go on vacations to Mexico, horse riding with them. There were like camps, 2 weeks, 1 month, and so on. And I mean, nobody's ever been sexually abused in my school, and as far as I know, but I mean, they were accepted. They were accepted. No, in terms of rumor, they wouldn't have let them into the school if there were this kind of rumors. It was.
So, what do you think, Claudia Kell? Do you think Pope John Paul II knew about these allegations against the Legion of Christ founder?
I couldn't look into his head, but I read that it was known in the Vatican by then, and that he even put on a ban on all people that even slightly tried to criticize Maciel. So Maciel was just treated like a saint almost, right, by him. And I just think he focused on different topics, also politically. He focused on fighting communism, but he was totally blind on concerning right-wing dictators. I mean, he was beckoning dictators like Pinochet in Chile. So what about this? I don't think that you can canonize a
I mean, I guess we all agree on the fact that more time might have helped. I think anyhow that for the very hard time when John Paul II was a pope, with all the transition and political, technological, media transition, he was a fan of realpolitik, and so he had to give up some ethics for the sake of survival of the church. So the risk of the disappearance of the church from the late 70s to the mid-2000s would have been very high with the Pope without this political intelligence, as Alex said.
And it's a fact that not only John Paul II, but Benedict after him and many popes before them, the church is present in every corner of the world. So it has to try to adjust with the earthly leaders, so to speak. And for the church, it does not really or necessarily matter if this is a democrat or it's a monarch or something. They try. The Pope always tries to secure the survival of the church. So when Francis was elected, it was immediately the question: what was his role within the times in Argentina when they had a dictatorship? So the church always. This is the same about the Pope. The one during the Second World War, help me.
Pius XII.
Thank you. How he would have behaved, and he tried to secure the church and the ministers and stuff. So I guess to say, well, he didn't really, in our understanding now in the studio, is leaning back. If you are responsible for the survival of the church in this or that ankle of the world, you may have different grounds and decisions.
I would completely agree with you, but we're talking about canonization, about sainthood. I mean, sure, John Paul II has had its merits politically, but is he the right person to become a saint?
Well, the question is perhaps not for us to answer, but here is why he's being canonized, because for two miracles that he is in charge of. The claim is that he cured two gravely ill women after his death, two gravely ill women who prayed towards him, to him, and
God healed them.
God cured one most recent woman from Costa Rica. What do you make of these incidents?
I don't believe in miracles concerning, or I don't believe that there are miracles that break natural law or the law of natural science. And I'm quite irritated about the Catholic Church's believing in miracles in the sense of looking for medical improvement or trying to in a positivistic way of objectivate miracles. That's quite irritating to me.
Stefano, the miracles, do they happen?
Well, if you believe in it, yes. If you don't, they don't happen. And if you don't believe in miracles, you can't believe in saints. So, yeah. So you're asking me if I believe in miracles? Yeah. Personally, I don't know. I cannot answer.
It's obvious that even the people, to help you both out of that, in biblical times, what the New Testament says, that when Jesus tried to heal people, they would have to have faith in that. It's not just happening like that. It's not like a vending machine. So if you have no belief in it, then even Jesus couldn't heal you. But the miracles, which is the far interpretation of these biblical stories, they approve Christ's divinity. So when he does a wonder, he's not doing the miracle for the miracle's purpose, but to approve something higher. And this is what I guess what the Catholics perceive in the miracles, that they say they approve Christ's divinity and the existence of God. And necessarily the woman in Costa Rica, if she would not have believed in a miracle, she would not have received one.
Well, I believe in miracles in this sense that two people fall in love against all plausibility, or nations or people get reconciled after centuries of hatred, and there are really strange things happening to people that turned their lives into completely different ways. I believe in miracles in this sense, and I think to believe in that the impossible can become possible sets free an enormous energy in people, and we need this belief. But believing in miracles that they can break the laws of natural sciences.
No, I guess in the church procedure, this means just that not everybody can come along and claim somebody's saints. You have also seen every religion, I guess, the higher form of the religion is very suspicious about the faith of the people, because it's superstitious, it's esoteric, and I guess this is what we find very formalistic, is from back in the days that not everybody could say this one is a saint and that one is a saint, because back in the days this also meant something economically. If you have a saint of your own in your village, you will have all the pilgrims, and with the pilgrims comes the money, and so this has been a very economic factor. And so the church tried to establish a mechanisms or a procedure where, first of all, the church has in its hand who is or is not a saint, and also to get rid of the abuses of some local saints.
So just to understand the backdrop here, the technical backdrop of this process, who then decides in the 21st century, in this particular case, for instance, with this woman from Costa Rica, who decides whether a miracle has taken place and how this miracle came about?
Well, I think
I'm talking about the technical process.
I think there's a whole congregation
dealing with that.
There is a commission that actually investigates the case, but it's very important to know that miracles are just a condition for sanctity, but it's not the main reason. It's not you make miracles, then you are some sort of mystic and you're a saint. The main condition is the fact that the person lived a holy life. So respecting the ethics and the rules of the church, and represents an example for the other. Then there is this concurrent condition of miracles, of setting an example, of being something also after death. Although Wojtyła is rumored to have given miracles also when he was living, but these are rumors.
But it makes it even more ridiculous in my eyes.
Don't call it ridiculous.
Just a side thing.
I'm not a believer, but many people believe in that. Let's not call it ridiculous.
Well, I think we on the show, for better or worse, will not be able to decide when or if a miracle will have taken place. But one thing is for certain, there are critics out there who say popes regardless which one we're talking about, popes in general should not be canonized because they already have such an exponential role and they've already proven that they are close to God. What do you make of this, Alexander Görlach? Should popes be exempt from the canonization process?
What Stefano said or opened our view is that not only popes can become saint or be canonized, but every baptized person. We have so many saints that are known, let's say, all over Europe, all over the St. Martin, who gave part of his jacket to a poor guy, or St. Elizabeth, who helped the poor and helped healing them, gave them food. So what is necessarily is to become a saint, or the primary condition is that in the perception of the faithful, you are a saint. So you are made a saint by the perception of the people. So you are an imitator of Christ, and this can become you. Don't be, but or you even, or Ali, maybe you not, but even maybe you if you convert yourself. I don't know, or even myself.
Might not happen on this show, but
what I want to say is that. If you are a baptized member of the church and you live a faithful life, then you could also be, you are already, the council would say, you are on the road of this holiness, you are on this pilgrimage, and everybody who is on that pilgrimage can become a saint.
But let's get a bit deep.
And you should not exclude the popes from that. That would be unfair, just to answer your question.
But here's the point, though. Close to 1/3 of the so far 265 popes have been canonized, which leaves 2/3 of the 265 popes not having been canonized. What does it say? Is there a ranking here among popes?
You see that in medieval altar paintings. When you have the Judgment Day, you see a lot of bishops and popes going to hell. So if you are a pope, you automatically are not a saint. You have you inherit an office, and you as a person are not holy, but the office is. So you can also fail in filling that position. And as the people in the medievals knew, even popes will have their difficulties on Judgment Day.
Stefano.
Amen.
Yeah, oder?
Yes.
Well, Pope, and it's already been noted, Pope John Paul II, in his lifetime, has canonized 482 individuals. That's more than all of his predecessors combined. Do you think, Claudia Keller, with such a number, there might a trivialization effect might kick in, that sainthood stops becoming special at some point?
Yeah, could be. That is, you pointed it out before, that this is a kind of secularization of sainthood. And, I think Catholic Church should be more careful with sainthood.
Stefano, should the Catholic Church be more selective when it comes to canonization?
I think the Church during John Paul II aimed to be larger, and so it necessarily had to become more pop, and having more saints was than pop, so they had to do it.
Yeah, and doing our math here, the Church is still growing. I mean, this might be our European narrow view on that, but Catholicism and Christianity in general is still growing all over the planet. It's still the religion #1. If you do math, it doesn't say anything about the spiritual value of that, but so more Christians over the course of history means logically more saints. And as much as there's plenty of situations on the planet where the Church is in difficult situation, in persecution and all that, and so the martyrdom is something that we do not see in Europe, but it's
canonized whole lists of Chinese or Korean martyrs.
Yeah. And even when he was in Berlin in 1996, he canonized two guys who were also in concentration camp and died there, and died of the consequences of being in those camps. So the Church is not all over the planet in a situation where it can fulfill its purpose, but there's many of persecution situations, and in these situations you need to strengthen the faithful, and so this is why you highlight specific individuals, women and men.
Claudia Keller, regardless what one thinks of these canonizations, and my question would be, do you think that the upcoming ceremony, has the potential to give an additional boost to the Catholic Church again? In the outside perception.
Well, I don't think this will boost for longer than Sunday or Monday next week. No, I don't think. Well, of course, for Poland, probably. But
the sign that hundreds and thousands of people, jubilant people, will gather at Vatican City to witness this event, do you think that's not a glue, a binding glue, if you will, among the believers?
No, not as the papacy of Pope Francis over the past year. I mean, he set a new flame, and well, no. But not upcoming Sunday.
And Pope Francis, by all accounts, is a very popular post. He's been receiving a lot of media attention, mostly positive. What do you think? This ceremony will only add to his popularity?
I think this ceremony will be important also to check the status of the so-called Christian subculture. So we have to see how the different faiths within the church are moving, and also the one among young people, because Comunione e Liberazione, the main Italian movement of young Catholics, has been quite much disappointed by the position towards what you mentioned before, Claudia, in terms of sexual abuses and so on, and other problems. So they didn't have a very good relationship with Benedict. We have to see what's going on now. So this is going to be also a check on the status of the church. And I think, in my perception, what I've heard from Rome, this is going to be a success for Pope Francis. So might be somehow a boost, at least internally, for the believers. I don't know, externally.
There's two views on that. There's a Catholic one and maybe a global one. In the Catholic sense, popes come and go. I mean, this is like, and this, I mean, this positive. So in the Catholic self-understanding, you have the Bishop of Rome as the vicar of Christ and the head of the church, and you learn how to live with that. So, and you also learn to reconcile your own life and your own ideas with that, which are official doctrine. I mean, this has been the case all over the course of time. And in this global view, the papacy is stronger than ever before, since the Pope is one of the most known persons on the planet.
Pope
he
Francis.
is the Pope, yeah, but I mean, in the media age, all the other popes before him were the same. So the Pope has as maybe a part of the conscience of the world, as a righteous figure, as what many people project on him. But the Pope is clearly, or the papacy is clearly something different than being the President of the United States or the President of Russia or something else. So within that ceremony, having people from all over the planet watching it, the papacy will be, show its best side, and is stronger than ever before, I guess.
The Vatican will show its best side, says Alexander Gerlach, and many people will flock towards the Vatican to witness this unique event, which we, of course, on DW will continue to follow. I want to thank my guests for a very spirited discussion. Unfortunately, I don't have the power to canonize all three of you, but I want to thank you nonetheless for a great discussion. Thank you out there for tuning in, and looking forward to seeing you again next week for a new edition of Quadriga.